Right, good morning once again. Good morning once again. It's now, I'm not sure what the time is because I can't see on my screen. Yeah, 3 minutes past 10. I think let's get started. This is, I think, one of the single most important processes that happens during an expo. And if not done right, your entire expo loses its credibility. And therefore, I consider the judging aspect to be really, really important. I see your message there. Good morning, Zolile. Good to have you here this morning. I'm just going to ask someone who is monitoring the chat for me, whoever that may be, to just copy and paste the links in the QR code so that people can make sure that they get onto the attendance register. Thank you for that as a start. So today we've actually come to the last session. This being the last session, I need to admit that it's not everything related to Expo, but what I've done is highlight the important aspects of having an Expo and hosting an Expo successfully, ranging from getting the projects, starting the kids with those projects. We looked at then having your first district expo last week. We had a look at that assessment sheet there. And then, of course, let's say your kids have now progressed from a district expo and you're now doing a regional expo. And this is where the actual judging with marks commences. So this deserves a section on its own. And so I didn't do the assessment sheet for the regional expo because that goes hand in hand with what we are doing today. I keep getting a message on my screen saying that my internet is unstable, so I hope I'm audible. I think just for safety, I'm going to do the following. Just bear with me for a second. I'm going to nominate someone based on my interactions over the 3 weeks, this being the 4th one. People who very often interacted with me. Let me see. I'm going to make Mr. Liteba a co-host. So if something pops up, Mr. Liteba, you'll be able to just warn me, unmute and say, hey, we can't hear you. Then I'm going to take a second individual so that I don't continue talking. Meanwhile, I'm not audible to the audience. Charles, I'm going to make you a co-host as well. So if anything comes up, if I'm talking about something and it's not visible on the screen, you can just also warn me so that I don't go off talking and meanwhile no one can hear what I'm saying. So with that being said, I can see we are getting more participants. Can I please ask those two gentlemen to continuously, as you see the numbers are changing in terms of participants, please keep posting that attendance list. Make sure we capture everyone. So by next week, this time, I can have, I should have issued your participation certificate or your training certificate based on the attendance register. Okay, thank you for that. A little bit of just background organization. Let's jump right into it. What are we doing today? Let's quickly have a look. Now, this is a standard PowerPoint that we do with all our judges here in the Free State. So, as a standard operating procedure, we always do an introduction of our organization, which is Expo. We highlight what is the purpose. Just picking up an error here, it's supposed to be 2024. We look at the qualities of good judges, qualities of a good Expo project, the types of projects. We revised it again, look at the categories in detail. We look at what are some of the important documents that judges need to have access to. What are the important documents that learners need to have? Then we go into the assessment process of the project, and we'll then open the floor for some questions. So, just as an introduction, I'm putting the slide up. We've spoken about this in our opening session, the first session. I'm leaving it there for a few seconds. You can read through there. If you weren't aware of it, the Expo is affiliated with the South African Council of Educators, and therefore any training that we provide, our teachers can claim professional development points according to the criteria that is indicated there under number 3. So too are we affiliated with many of the other professional bodies. One of them being this SECNAS, which is for registered scientists. And through interaction with Expo, they too can start collecting personal development points. All right, let's go over into the purpose of judging at 2024. The aim of judging is to objectively, that's very important, objectively assess projects. So no bias. And using an assessment sheet is one of those ways which we try to keep the assessment objective. So it's a standard assessment sheet which is applicable to all learners. We then realized that not all projects are the same or written up the same. So we try to look at those 4 different types of projects which we've identified in previous sessions, which we will look at now as well. And based on that, develop specific assessment sheets that accompany that specific type of project. All judges must have the same understanding of what a project is and the same understanding of the assessment sheet. So there must be no ambiguous text within our assessment sheet, so that when the judge in Lesotho reads it and the judge in Mexico reads it, they all understand the same requirement from the project. Please ask any questions. This is relevant for the session now, but during your expo, if you have an inexperienced judge and they are not sure of what the assessment criteria means, and there's some ambiguity, you as the judges coordinator or the chief judge of that event, you need to be equipped to be able to interpret it for them and clarify what that particular criteria refers to, or at least clarify up the ambiguity that the judge may be experiencing. So what are the qualities of a very good expo judge? This is a volunteer who is a professional and committed to the entire judging process. Now, let me give you an example. So our ISF is a hybrid judging process. Our learners upload the projects onto our Expo database, and the judges do assessment of the documents a month before the actual ISF happens. They look at those documents and they can do, I think, 74%, rather 76% of the assessment they can already do just looking at the documents. Then the other 24% of the assessment is actually the interview, face-to-face interviews. Now, when we say a committed judge to an entire process, it refers to the judge knows from the beginning, I'll be assessing online, but I will be required to physically be in Johannesburg to go and do the interview. So that judge knows I cannot drop the process. You can imagine how difficult it is if Judge A assessed the project online, and now we need to find a new judge to look at the project when the learners are in Johannesburg. Then in actual fact, the judging process starts afresh, because then you need to allow the judge to look at their documentation before they can actually do the interview. Because there's no other way of doing the interview without preparation and understanding the content of the project in advance. This person must be a good team worker and who values the opinion of their fellow judges. Adequate knowledge. Now, the knowledge that I'm referring to here is twofold. Number one, this person must have subject content knowledge. I can't have a psychologist assess an engineering project because they don't possess the necessary subject content knowledge to do a fair and objective assessment. The other part of adequate knowledge is this person must understand the judging process, the flow of the actual event. They must understand that. Otherwise, they become disorientated and could become a hindrance in the process, delaying everything else that happens after judging, which includes the capturing of the marks, printing of certificates, allocation of the medals, allocation of special prizes, etc., etc. So the whole prize giving ceremony then becomes delayed. So again, two things: content knowledge they must have, and they must have a good understanding of the process that is followed on the day of judging. The judge judges the project and not the child. All right, so irrespective of who their child is, you need to judge the project work in front of you presented by the learner, but you're not judging the learner. They must be sensitive, empathetic, and understand children. That's why for us, the best judges are the teachers, because the teacher is trained to work with learners. A teacher has the sensitivity. It's inherent that they become empathetic, because it's working with kids is a very delicate thing. And I must admit, I've seen situations where you get these highly qualified individuals, academics, so they've got a whole lot of subject content knowledge, but they lack these skills, which is sensitivity and empathy. And when they leave those kids are in a state. They are upset, so much so that they want to leave the competition, because this person comes across as judgmental. We know they are called judges, but we're not inferring you need to be judgmental about the project. So I actually lean towards the word assessor, not a judge, an assessor. They must be able to assess the learner according to their developmental age. So the way you assess a grade 4 learner is not the same way that you would assess a grade 12 learner. And the judge must be able to gauge the situation that they find themselves in. Oh, this is a grade 4 learner. And take it down to that level of the learner. Or when they finish with a grade 4 and now they suddenly meet a grade 12 learner, then they should be able to gauge, okay, okay, this learner is very well versed in this topic. And that learner, you can engage a little bit more on an academic level about the content of the project. So you need that kind of expert. They must be a good listener. And there you see, I put in non-judgmental. They shouldn't be judging the learners or their project work. They must be unbiased, impartial, and objective. Then, of course, they must be good communicators, both verbally and non-verbally, because your non-verbal communication must align with your verbal communication. Sometimes you can say the best words, best intention, but your body language is saying the completely opposite. All right, I'm sure you understand what I mean by that. They must be aware of how the judging process affects the learners. This is really, really important. Be aware that your interaction with the learner at that stage is very crucial, because if you cause some sort of emotional distress to their child, that is what they leave the competition with, and is most probably going to be the reason why they don't want to come back. But if you make it enjoyable, a positive learning experience, they will feel, yes, I understand where I was lacking in my work. I can improve on this. So I'm going to come back next year, fix that, and I should probably achieve better results. What is a good Expo project? What do we consider is a good Expo project? It shows the following. There must be clarity in the purpose. The learner must display knowledge and understanding of their topic. They should have done thorough research with verified journals or articles. There must be evidence based on their research. There must be evidence to back up their ideas. They must show a good understanding of the scientific method. There should be some creativity in the method that they use, the materials that they use, and how they represent or present their data. They must be able to identify any limitations to their research and clarify what makes their research original. So you're looking for that learner that was able to say, okay, this has been done in my topic, but nowhere could I find this piece. This piece about this topic is missing, and my project is filling that gap to make it a little bit more complete. They should be able to clarify what is the value of their research and the real world applications of their research. Let me summarize it this way. When you're looking at a project, whether it be any of the four, what you want to see is the learner identified a problem, a relevant problem. They are then able to identify, this is the aim of my project. I'm going to do this so that I can address the problem. Now, the aim links with how they test it. So, hypothesis, the method, all of that links very closely to what the purpose is. I want to prove that the amount of water has an effect on the growth rate of the plant. The way they test it must come across clearly. So there's a tight link. And therefore, there will be a tight link into the conclusion. And then they must be able to show through existing research how their investigation links to existing data and how it maybe improves or explores a different aspect to that research. So adding to the originality and the value of their research. Let's recall quickly what were those 4 types of projects. We had an engineering or computer science type of project, mathematical or theoretical type of project. We had a scientific investigation. And the 4th one was your social sciences. And then we've got the assessment sheets are different for these 4 different types of expo projects. So we've got 4 different assessment sheets. And if I'm correct, I attached these to an email I sent out. If not Monday, it was Tuesday. So you should actually have these in PDF format. You already have them. We're going to look at one at least and just have a look at what's happening on that assessment sheet. So it's important that the judge is able to read the project and make a quick assessment to say, okay, this is a social science type of project, because the assessment sheet that the judge uses must correspond with the type of project. If you're going to assess an engineering project using a scientific investigation, the learner is going to score low. In fact, I've done this research and I've seen if the wrong assessment sheet is used on a project, the learner will always be disadvantaged, because you're not going to find a hypothesis in an engineering project and immediately you start giving zeros. So now the learner is disadvantaged. That's the first thing that the judge needs to be able to identify. The next thing I suggest the judge should be able to do is, when he's reading or she's reading the project, they should be able to get a rough idea what category this project falls under. So if they find this child is registered under bio, or let's say biomedical and medical sciences, but the project is actually nothing to do with biomedical and medical sciences, but there is more engineering involved in that, they should be able to pick up on that. And then what would happen is, yes, as the initial judge, they can have a look at the project and do its assessment according to a scientific investigation. But because they've now realized there's more engineering involved in this biomedical project, maybe get the engineering judge to also do an assessment using the engineering sheet. And then we have a look and we see, okay, the child scores better marks under engineering, and you don't change the category of the child of the project. You rather use the best assessment that the child could get, and that is the mark you use to capture. Afterwards, you can explain to the child, we used that engineering because your project is more engineering than its actual focus. So why am I making this example? Because it happens very often. A child builds a device to solve a medical problem. So they think it's medically related, therefore they put it under biomedical. But the device that they are building and the testing of the device, all of that focuses on engineering and not the application. So the research focus is on engineering and not the application, or what this device will be used for. That is not what it's used. That's not where the focus is. Yes, its application is to use in the medical field, but the focus of the research is on engineering. All right, I'm going to quickly skip ahead because we've done this quite a few times, looking at what those different types of expo projects are. Let's go and talk about what are some of the important documents that you need for your judging process. Now, we've got some legal documents that need to be given to each of our judges, because some of the information in the project is proprietary information. You'll be surprised how many of the learners we see actually have legal protection for their intellectual property already. So if you as a judge go and share this information outside of the competition, there will be legal ramifications for you. So we have our judges complete a non-disclosure agreement, and as the word says, I, the judge Nicho, will not talk about this project outside of this competition. So you can't go home and tell your child, look, I see this thing, it's working like this. You can't do that. There's a code of conduct that we've got in place that our judges need to adhere to at all times to ensure the fairness, the objectivity of the assessment process. We also have a declaration of conflict of interest. This is where the judge says, I hereby declare that the person I'm going to assess, I don't know them, they're not my family member, it's not my friend's child, it's not my great-grandchild, or whatever the case may be. You declare that. Or if that is the case, you also state that up front to say, this is my neighbor's child's nephew. You need to acknowledge all of those things. There's a judge's pledge that they form, that they fill in, and then we have a manual. Having the information that's on the slide is in a manual format and highlighting the exact steps to follow when you do the assessment process. All judges must complete these forms before they even see any documents related to a project. So in our hybrid model I referred to earlier on, this is done via email. We then, once we've received this legal documentation from our judges, only then do we release the projects via email for them to assess. Some more important documents that are now not related to legal aspects is a project display form, a project assessment form, and then your judge's ethics report. Now, what is the difference between these? This should actually be called the project display approval form. So this is, in a 2-minute glance at the exhibition of the learner, do you notice anything unethical, unsafe? Unethical being offensive pictures. You notice branding on the posters. You notice any dangerous stuff on the table. Water. If a water container is not closed and sealed properly, it's not allowed on our exhibitions. So bottled water, it must be a bottled water so it can seal tightly. No live organisms, no open petri dishes with microbes growing, stuff like that. In your engineering projects, all the wiring must be insulated. Batteries must be insulated. Everything must be grounded. It must not be plugged in until the judge asks, please plug in the device so that we can see how it works. So those type of things is what you assess in a project display form. Now, we have actually separated that aspect from our judging. So now our judging consists of 2 teams. We've got a team that assesses for marks. We call them category judges. And then we've got a team that does this project display approval. And they go around, before the judges even come to assess the projects for marks, this project display team comes around, looks at those aspects, completes that form, puts it on the table. So when the judge comes to assess for marks, they can see, okay, there were no safety issues here. I can start doing my assessment. So project assessment form is our assessment sheet. And then with that assessment sheet goes an ethics report. I'm going to look at these documents in a little bit more detail now. Now, before we look at the documents, the judging team is compiled of a few members. We've got a chief judge. This person is the last say in terms of mark allocation, or even in our regional cases, this guy is responsible for looking at ethical issues. This is the guy that will say this project should be disqualified. Now, he does not do that on his own. There is a panel that is responsible for serious matters related to judging. But this is a guy who has a lot of experience in the assessment of projects. So in other words, in terms of a pyramid, he's right there at the top. And he has the wealth of knowledge. So in an expo here in the Free State, that would most probably be me or one of my most senior conveners. So that brings me to the next thing. What is the convener? So each of our 13 categories has a main judge that is responsible for his categories. So this convener is the mediator between the judges. Let me give you an example. If we have a project, 2 judges will assess that very same project independently. So they don't go to the project together. Judge A will go and allocate a mark. Then when he's finished, then Judge B goes and assesses. And when they are finished assessing the project, Judge A and B meet each other so that they can make a comparison. So now Judge A says that project is 65. And Judge B says, no, it's 75. Now we come into a bit of a problem because the one judge is giving a bronze medal and the other judge is giving a silver medal. They need to each one state their case and say, why am I giving 65 and why are you giving 75? And then come to a consensus to say, okay, we then agree this project should be a silver, therefore we go with the 75. That is how it could happen. Or the judge who gave silver can say, now I see what you mean. I scored maybe too high here in the method. Here it shouldn't be a 4, I think it should have been a 3. And eventually they then decide the project falls within the bronze range, which is that 65. That's the second thing that could happen. The third thing that could happen is the 2 judges just cannot agree on a mark. And each one is sticking to their opinion to say, listen here, I'm not changing my bronze. And this one says, I'm not changing my silver. That is when they go to the convener, because the convener has more experience than them in terms of judging in that category. So now the convener will listen to each one's side. The convener very well might say, okay, guys, I heard your stories. Now I'm going to take an assessment sheet. I'm going to assess that project and come back with a final mark. And then the convener's mark is used for that project. In the very worst case scenario that even the convener can't get to a mark, they escalate it to the chief judge. And what the chief judge says is law, and no further entering into disputes and communications will take place. So the chief judge will look and say, I think it's bronze, end of story. No one can argue about it afterwards. I hope I've explained those 3 bullets and how they work in a scenario. We'll meet it again very shortly. I've already explained to you what this project display team does. This project display approval team, what they do. So they look at a 2-minute glance. No details, no reading documents, just looking at the poster, looking at the model or the display that is in front there, quickly browsing through the files, check for research plan, abstract, and whether the report file is there. So just 2 minutes. I'm just estimating that 2 minutes. Looking at that and making sure it complies to a checklist, which is called the project display approval form. And they just check yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, wherever it's applicable. And they make a decision there whether the project is fine to be assessed or not. Then we've got an ethics team. This ethics team works very closely with the chief judge. And their main role is to go and check for animal testing, human testing, plagiarism. Now, what we've done is we've incorporated a first layer of ethics into the judging process itself. So when the judge looks at the project and they are reading, they need to constantly think of ethics. And when they pick up this, there might be one of those three main things I just mentioned: animal testing, human testing, or plagiarism. This is when they get this team involved. This team interrogates their project, not the learner. They look at the documents, find that information, and prove that there is some sort of ethical issue. They escalate it with the chief judge. They make a decision to say, guys, this project cannot receive an award. So our disqualification is not making a scene. When the kids are standing there, then this group of the ethics team and the chief judge go to the child: you have been disqualified. Close the boards, take the child out of the hall. That's not what we do. All right? So the purpose here is just to go and say to the marks capturer, the judges gave this thing a 92%, but 92% of this project is plagiarized from Dr. So-and-so's paper. It's a complete copy and paste. Then all that person does is reduce that mark to anything below 50%. And next to that, write a comment, say there is a serious ethical violation. We'll get into ethics now, into detail. So now that child doesn't win anything, and it becomes the responsibility of the judging team to communicate with that learner, with the teacher and the parent, to inform them. Your learner was actually disqualified based off the following information. It's about teaching the children the correct and ethical way to do research. The last one here is the judge's admin. This is the person capturing the marks. This is the person continuously monitoring the process to say, guys, we have 1 hour left. Less than 50% of the projects have been judged at this stage. We need to up the speed at which we are judged. So this person is very crucial, because if they get delayed, the whole process at the end, which is the prize giving, gets delayed as well. And if there's one thing I've learned, people hate waiting. People are impatient. So if you said you're starting at 10 o'clock, people don't want to wait until 3 minutes past 10. It makes them very, very impatient, especially if they make the effort to be there earlier. Let's look at the Expo judging tools. These are the two documents I referred to earlier on. So you've got your assessment sheet with the marks, and the second document is called the Judge's Ethics Report. I'm going to open them when I'm finished with this PowerPoint, and then we can have a look at them quickly. So those two documents are what your judges will be armed with. And you must remember, each project gets its own assessment sheet. Each project must be assessed at least 2 times. I'm going to open the chat now for the first time. I am... Okay, so someone did not register. Thank you, Charles, for executing your duties flawlessly. We close there again. Then let's have a closer look at the assessment sheet. Let's have a look at the assessment sheet. Please open. Thank you. Again, we've got 4 types of Expo projects. Therefore, logically, there should be 4 types of assessment sheets. And we've color-coded them. I hope it's a little bit clear on your screen. So the blue one is scientific investigations. I don't know what to call this color, but it's not a complete blue. Social science, I don't even know what to call that color. In fact, both of these, very weird colors. I only see primary colors. But you can see obvious color differences in those assessment sheets. This is a screenshot of the top part. This is the part that must be filled in by the judges. Let's have a closer look at why that is so important. The learner's name must be completed here. You have to fill in their grade or form. This is for tracing and auditing purposes, the region where they are from, what category they are, and the project number. You'll recall last week I said use a project number so that we can kind of remove the learner. When you are discussing your results, you remove the learner from the equation and you make it more objective. You just talk about the project. So ENG001. So all the engineerings will be marked ENG, starting from 001 all the way to 00, whatever number projects they are. Then you'll see here's a summary scoring sheet. So for the introduction, how you fill in here how much marks were obtained for each of those aspects. If we quickly have a look at the mark allocation here, I'm sure it's done somewhere in the PowerPoint as well. You will see the introduction of the project is only 12 marks, and a bulk of the marks go to the allocation for method and for the results discussion and conclusion. For the way the work is written up, only 8 marks. And then another big portion is allocated to the interview, face-to-face interview that you may have with the learner. Then we've got an initial mark. So the judge will capture his marks over here, or her marks, and then add their mark, or just write in their mark right here where I'm pointing. So let's say 65 out of 100. This piece remains open. This is only completed once the 2 judges have discussed the project in their assessment and they've agreed with the convener. This will be the final mark, and then we enter the mark over there. Please do not forget as a judge to complete your name on top here and also the name of your convener. Like I said, Expo is regularly audited. Strangely enough, I don't think so much the money. We are more audited on our process, because with this process goes money. If you are allocating medals and special prizes and things, that is money. Indirectly, it's money. So we need to prove that the best project got the best prize. All right, so our process gets evaluated quite a bit. So the completion of this section is crucial, because the auditor may very well say, I want to speak to this judge called Keketso Muteba, because I want to know why he gave this learner 95%. And judge number 1 gave this project only 60%. So it's important that this top part gets filled in correctly. I emphasize this red circle here. It's only filled in after the 2 judges communicated with their convener and decided on the final mark. So judging the project. So now you've entered the hall. So we've got a process called pre-judging. This is where the judge can look at the documents without the learners being there. It's quiet in the hall, and you just hear the shuffling of feet as judges move from project to project, and they go and look at the documents. Now, while the judge is looking at the documents in this pre-judge, he makes or she makes notes about the project, and you can make notes. There's a space on the assessment sheet where you can actually fill in and make some notes about the project. So when you look at the assessment sheet again, and the name of the learner, the title of the project, notes you make, immediately the complete picture comes back and you remember what it is, what it's all about. And in these notes, you can actually start capturing some things that you are not clear about in the project. And these would be the questions you ask the learners in the interview. You read the topic, then you go to the research plan to get an idea of what the student was trying to do. Then you read the abstract about what actually happened. Right? Very often you'll see what they wanted to do may not be what they eventually did. So the plan doesn't necessarily always link up directly with what actually transpired. Another document I would like to add here that you should also have a look at is the journal, because the journal shows almost a day by day of how the project progressed. And it gives you an idea of the thinking of the learner. So now you understand what the project was supposed to be, and you get a journey of what happened, and the abstract tells you what exactly transpired in a summary format. Now you go to your report file. All right. You start, like you said, you start reading the poster as well, because that will be in front of you. Then research the project topic on the internet. This is something very important. Children can sometimes be very lazy. So if they wanted to plagiarize, copy and paste, you can put something similar into your Google search. And usually, it's the first thing that pops up on your Google search is where the learners tend to go and copy from. This is to check for plagiarism. If plagiarism is found, flag it to your ethics on the ethics checklist. You'll have a look at that document just now, and continue to judge the project as if you didn't see anything. Just make a note on your ethics report, you found plagiarism. It's important when you find plagiarism, get the URL where the learner copied and pasted from, because that's your evidence. When the teacher or the parent wants to come and dispute and say, how can you say my child copied? That is not true. Then you can say, but here's the URL. Let's open it. Open the URL. Can you see? This whole paragraph is exactly the same as your child's introductory paragraph. Important. The next slide is just showing what are some of the similarities and differences in your assessment sheet. We've mentioned this even when I was talking about the research plan. We highlighted in the headings what is the same, what is different in the different types of Expo projects. One of the major ones, of course, is that the engineering one is the only one that has engineering goals. And then the other one was in mathematics, it's the only one where you've got conjectures. The others are all based on measured evidence. While in the mathematics one, you are inferring a conclusion based on information from other verified resources. Okay, that just continues there. So at this stage, you finish looking at the documents, you started assessing. Maybe I should mention this. Before you start filling that assessment sheet, you have to read through the entire documentation and get a full picture in your head of what the learner did for that project. Once you've done that, then you can start doing an assessment. Why is this so important? It's important because we expect the learners to write in that logical format. Let's take the scientific investigation that we are all familiar with. You start with introduction, hypothesis, the research question, then the aim, and then the method. Then you go to conclusion. But what if this child wrote all haphazard? So where you expect the hypothesis to be, it's not there. So now you give the child 0. But only after reading to the end, in the conclusion statement, the child says, my hypothesis was this and this. And based on the results, it was not the case. Then, can you really give a 0? You can't give a 0 because the hypothesis is clearly stated in the conclusion. It's not where you expected it to be, but you have now already given the child 0. Where is the hypothesis correct, accurately stated, just not in the right place? So that is unfair towards the learner. That's why I'm saying read the whole document, get an overview of what the project is about, where everything is in the project. Then you take the assessment sheet and you start allocating marks. Making sure every now and then, okay, hypothesis, let me go back, let me page in the document. Here's the hypothesis, the child says this and this and this. This hypothesis is not showing both the dependent and independent variable. It's not completely 100% right, so I'm going to give the child a 2 and not a 3. All right. All of that will make sense when we actually look at that. So prejudging is complete. Now you go to the interview. Now there's a couple of things that are very important to note in the picture that I've got on the screen right now. The learner is standing. The judge is seated. So the chair, we always tell our learners, the chair that is there is not for you to sit on. That is when the judge comes, you offer them a seat so that they can sit. This gives the child some psychological advantage over the judge, because when they stand taller than the judge, they feel that they are in control. I don't know how many of you have judged at an expo before, but these kids can become really, really nervous. They shake. Some of them want to cry. Some of them react very strangely and even laugh uncontrollably, but that is all nerves. And your role as the judge is to make them comfortable. And that starts off with a simple greeting. Good morning. And an introduction. My name is Nicho. I will be judging your project today. I'm so excited to hear about what research you've been busy with. May I take a seat? If they don't offer you the seat, ask them, may I take a seat? I'm so tired from walking the whole day. Can I just take a seat while I listen to you? It may be the very first project you're meeting for the day. You're just trying to create or establish a rapport with your learners so that they can feel at ease to talk to you. If you notice, even before they start talking about their project, they feel a little bit uncomfortable, you can let them do something else. So ask them, tell me all about the Ritabile. Who's Ritabile? What do you like to do for fun? And let them talk about, my name is Ritabile Mhlaba. I stay in Net, and I like to play netball. And let them do that, just so that they can start talking and start feeling comfortable. And then you can go over it. So tell me, Ritabile, why did you start doing this? Why were you so interested in this topic? Let them give you that backstory. Yeah, when I was walking down the street to go home and I crossed the bridge, then I noticed the river is polluted. And I was just thinking how the fish must be. Let them give you that backstory. This is a nervous child. You just want them to start getting comfortable. And once they get into that motion and talking about their hypothesis and how they went testing, now you can ask them the questions that you made a note of in your assessment sheet. Ritabile, you said you're going to prove that the water in that Caledon River is polluted. Tell me, why did you do pH testing of the water? Then they must explain to you, why are they looking at the pH and not any other factors? So stuff like that. So in order to come up with those type of questions, you need to have a detailed understanding of what the learner did. So that's why that prejudging is so important. Let me move over to a little short video featuring yours truly, myself. If you've been at this training before, you would have seen the video as well. So this little recording, I'm just going to stop sharing quickly because I don't think I shared the sound. This recording was done spontaneously. We were just sitting there and my colleague who was presenting this judging aspect then asked, let me ask my two colleagues to quickly come and do or simulate an interview. And then as I was walking there, I warned my colleague, I'm going to be hostile. I'm going to do everything that you are not supposed to do as a judge. And so you'll see on the screen, the lady sitting here is my colleague from KwaZulu-Natal, Nalini Duki. And she is acting as the learner in front of a project, one over here. And I am the judge. And obviously, the first thing you'll notice, she's very small. I'm a huge fellow. If you've never seen me in person, I'm a very big guy. And look at what I did. I made her sit down, and now I'm towering over. Please, if your volume is off, you can also switch on your volume and you can hear what transpired in this interview. I'm hoping it plays.
My project is about finding, it's about late coming and reasons why learners come late to school. It's a serious problem at our school, so this is the reason I decided to find out more about the project.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so what I decided to do for my project is I conducted qualitative and quantitative research. So
Okay. What's the difference between qualitative and quantitative?
So qualitative research, a lot of questionnaires, no. Quantitative research, I handed out questionnaires to 65 learners to see the reasons why they came late to school. And thereafter, for the qualitative research, I chose...
Okay, just hold on. So you are saying 65 responses would be enough to represent a whole community and why these kids are coming late to school?
The sample size was chosen as 65 because these were the learners that come regularly late to school.
Okay. So I did this type of research as a thesis for my master's. And this is definitely not the approach I would have followed. But yeah, please continue. So what was your conclusion to the research?
The most common reason for the late coming was learners living far away from school. 15 learners travel long distances. As you can see on the graph, according to the results,
I don't see any units here. There could be 80 donkeys. I don't know what that is.
So it is there, maybe you can't see it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so that is definitely a demonstration of how an interview should not be done. You would have noticed I didn't come there, I didn't greet the person. Well, the video starts with me standing there. I didn't greet this learner. I'm towering over the learner. And every now and then I move back and I move forward, which creates an intimidating atmosphere for this child. You would have seen I was very hostile. One thing I was doing, I was on the phone the whole time checking messages. At some stage, you would have heard me even ordering pizza, telling my wife on the phone there, please order us pizzas for tonight. And then I go and ask really hostile questions. And I make this learner very, very, very uncomfortable the whole time. Criticizing the work and asking questions that are not related to the content of the project. So interrogating the child's knowledge about terminology. For instance, what is the difference between quantitative and qualitative analysis? So that is not what you want to see. The other thing that happened, there was one thing that I left out here in the interview that I still wanted to do, but I was really embarrassed. I leave and I don't say anything to the child. But before I leave, I also do the assessment, filling in marks right in front of the child. And they can observe what I'm doing, so they see their results. The other thing that I wanted to add to this, but at that stage I became really uncomfortable, but Ask the learner for their phone number. Start flirting with the learner. Now, these examples may seem extreme, but it's stuff that we've observed. Learners come and report these things to say, that judge asked me for my number. I felt uncomfortable because it looked like he was interested in me in some other way. So these things happen as well, and you want to avoid all those unpleasant. I don't know how many of you heard, but there in the background at some stage someone was screaming from the audience that I need to be dealt with. I don't want to repeat that because the session is being recorded. It was a swear word, so I'm not going to repeat it, but someone was screaming from the audience, that judge, because it was really unpleasant. I think my colleague actually started believing that I was really that cruel to her. Okay, so you don't want to see any of that in your judging. Before the interview, you need to make a list of all the questions you want to ask so that you don't seem unprepared when you get to the learner. And you can only do that if you did proper pre-judging. And in the case of our hybrid model, we do it online. But sometimes our judges at regionals get to the projects the night before actual interviews. They actually sit down and they look at the projects. And only when you've got a full understanding of the project, you are then able to formulate proper questions. Then it's important to note, on the assessment sheet at the bottom, there's a space that asks you about plagiarism and ethical violations. Remember I said earlier on, during pre-judging, when you pick up any of these things, you need to make a note of it. But then you continue as if you've never seen it. So even if you've seen there's plagiarism in this project, you continue assessing and this project gets a 95 according to the assessment sheet. You leave it as 95, but to make sure your ethical team is aware that this is plagiarized. Give suggestions for improvements, and then also this one where the arrow is indicated is very important. So if the project can be improved, make a suggestion. Maybe if not yourself, you know of a colleague that has a speciality in this field, and you can say, okay, maybe contact this lecturer from the university and they could assist you in improving your project. The assessment sheet, the interview part, it's that last 24 marks. This is only completed once you are engaging face-to-face with the learner. Those are the questions which are asked there for the criteria. Consider the time you spent per interview. Sometimes the project may be so captivating. Without you knowing it, you've already used 30 minutes of the time speaking to one learner, but you've got 10 other projects to go and assess. So constantly keep the time factor in mind to make sure your time is spent equally with all your projects. These are just all related to the interview. So here's another nice example. So the learner was sitting next to the project. The judge realized the learner doesn't want to stand up. And so they got a seat from the project next door and then just sit next to the child, making sure that the child looks them in the eye. The same here, the judge realized I'm short enough so that we can look each other in the eye and I don't dominate over you. So they had a very nice discussion. And then I put this one here, no cell phones. It's difficult. Sometimes as a professional, you may be required to be available on your phone at all times. So there's nothing wrong with that, but reassure the child, they need to feel that their interview is a priority. So I would go and say, I'm really sorry. I would normally not answer my phone, but this call is a serious emergency. I'm going to come back and you can get my full attention, but let me quickly answer this call. But as far as possible, avoid answering your phone, especially if it's WhatsApps, especially if it's your spam callers. I don't know if you guys have the same problem, but there are certain insurance companies, I don't even know where they get your number, but they bother you. They call you all hours of the day and night. During the interview, Make notes related to the assessment. So if you maybe talking to the child, you realize in the document, the child's hypothesis is not very clearly stated. But when you're talking to the child is giving you a perfect hypothesis. You make a note of it. And you can say, okay, the hypothesis should be full marks now. Because initially you gave the child 1 out of the 4 marks that are available. But now speaking to the child, you realize, no, this child actually deserves a 4. You can go back and change the written word assessment and make that then a 4. Because learners are different, you'll understand it. Some learners are good with writing, other learners are not good with writing. Some learners are good with speaking and others are not. So you find a scenario where a learner has a very good project on paper, and when you get that this child is not comfortable speaking, maybe they have a speech impairment and they are stuttering. So because of that speech impairment, you can't penalize the child. Their paperwork is in order. On the other side, you may get to a project that's written on 3 pieces of paper, written, not typed. So it doesn't look very neat. The content is not very well described, but when the child starts to speak, they are giving you information that's not on the paper. Then that project also deserves to get good marks. So you as a judge must have that skill to be able to interpret those situations. Some questioning techniques: ask project-specific questions. So related to what the child did, don't ask them what's the difference between an independent and a dependent variable. You don't want to know that. Let them identify what is their dependent and independent variable. Put all comments regarding improvements on the assessment sheet. Be aware of any language barriers. You'll agree with me, our learners, they're not English home language. Our learners either here in the Free State either speak Xhosa or Sesotho at home. In some cases, it may even be their third language, because mother is Xhosa, father is Sesotho. So they speak either one of the two at home, and then English becomes the third language. So when you pick up this child is not comfortable speaking in English, there's nothing wrong with switching and saying, okay, let's switch to Sesotho. Maybe you feel more comfortable speaking to me in Sesotho. Let them speak. Let them speak and communicate the best way possible. In our case, sometimes when we come across that, we get our other judges and say, listen here, this learner is Sesotho. My Sesotho is not what it used to be when I was growing up there in Lesotho. Can you please assist me in translating my questions to the learner and translating the information they are giving you back? But it's important the translator says exactly what the learner says, and that they don't add their own little bit of flavor to the answer, improving the child's mark unknowingly. Allow them to ask you questions. So before I left there, I was supposed to ask the learner, do you have any questions for me? And very often, the most question asked is, how do you think I can improve my project? Learners always want to know that. So that's why we've incorporated that aspect in the slideshow. So when you're going through that project, make notes of how to improve it. So you're not caught off guard when the child is asking you, but you are an expert in social science. Tell me, how would you have improved this project? Then you've got an answer for the learner. Important, be a good listener. Eye contact. When the child is talking, look at them. If you remember the video I just showed you of me, I was constantly looking away, looking at the board, looking at my phone, looking at the paper in front of me. That gives the child a feeling this person is not interested in what I'm saying. You don't want to do that. It's about this experience. You remember, this experience is what determines whether or not a child develops a love for research or not. Your interaction with that child is crucial. At the end of the interview, express your gratitude for their time and effort they made in that research. Always give them positive feedback, irrespective of how you personally feel about that project. It's none of your business. You need to go and just say, thank you so much for this. I appreciate the research and effort you put into doing this project. I value the time that we spend together. And I wish you all the best. Enjoy the rest of your day. There you go. It's important to remember the POPI Act, confidentiality. That's why we had the non-disclosure agreement documents at the beginning. POPI Act here is in terms of photographs. Now, the POPI Act says a photo, if you take a photo of someone that's in public, then there's nothing wrong. So you actually can take photos of the learners when they are in a public space like an exhibition. But some parents are just not comfortable with having their kids on the internet. So please, rather don't take pictures with the kids. We see, especially with our young and new judges, they like to post things on Instagram, Facebook, and all these other social media platforms. So they're constantly taking pictures of themselves with the kids. Oh, doing my job today, I'm enjoying it so much, and they're posting it everywhere. I don't think it's okay. If someone took pictures of my kids without my permission, I would probably sue them. Before you submit the assessment form, ensure you've completed the summary over here, where you add the marks per section, and it's going to help you a lot. Because if you have to go through that long list and add up all the marks, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, whatever the case may be, not 8, it doesn't go as 8, it goes between 1 and 4. If you have to add all of those individual marks, it takes long. But if you've completed the section on introduction and you put the mark there, when you need to submit your initial mark, you just add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different marks and you have your final mark. Please make use of the calculator. You know, sometimes we feel, hi, my maths is good. I can add just using. We have seen instances when our data capturer, the person capturing the mark, when they pick up how the judges robbed this child of 10 marks, because now we use Excel to capture our marks. So when this data capturer is adding the marks on Excel, then the Excel sheet shows the child is supposed to get 85, but the judge only added up to 75. And so that disadvantages the child because 75 is silver, while 85 would be gold. Excuse me quickly, I just need to call. Okay, so please make sure this is filled in. Each project must be judged by 2 judges individually. They don't go there together and judge a project. It must be judged individually. And as we've seen on that screenshot of the assessment sheet, these are the mark allocations per heading on the report file. So again, you'll see the method used, the results discussion conclusion, the limitation and further research constitutes a big bulk of your project. Originality of the project is only 12 marks. So if we take this 12 out, so when we're talking about originalities, is it a novel idea, that type of thing? It constitutes 12 marks. 12 from 100 gives me 80. Is it 88? So if a child still has an opportunity to get 88, then it means, even though the project has been done before many years ago, but this child has done it very, very, very well. They've covered all those aspects. So it's not something new. Therefore, they might lose out on these 12 marks. That child can still get a gold medal. They can still get a gold medal. The other aspect to have a look at is written presentation. So how beautiful it looks is about 8 marks. And Actually, if you look at the assessment sheet, it never asks anything like that. Is it neat? Is it beautiful? It doesn't ask anything like that. The written presentation is just, is the report file there? Is the research plan there? Is the abstract there? Is the journal there? Those type of things. That is what they mean by written presentation. So even if that thing isn't beautiful, it can just be plain white paper with plain black font. No pictures. The child can still get a gold medal. So it's not about the beauty of the project and the decorations they put on. It's about the scientific content of the project. Let's quickly go to project ethics. Remember, we've got 3 main rules for ethics. So the purpose of the ethics report, this is the second document. So the assessment sheet always has an ethics report with it to go hand in hand. The purpose of that ethics report is to check if the research or part of the research violates any ethical issues. It is also to give feedback to the participant for upgrading the project for the next level of the competition of future research. Key aspects of your ethics: legal implications, human and animal testing, testing on vulnerable groups, the use of dangerous items, written violations like plagiarism, health and safety. That is the main. Now, I've always summarized it into 3. So here's some new things that could be added. All right, so those 6 things make up the key focus areas of your ethics report. And if any of these things are present, you need to determine whether it is not present at all, whether the violation is moderate, or whether it is severe. Now, the question should be, what is the difference between moderate and severe? We'll get to that shortly. So just to have a look at what that document looks like, you will see, again, the learner's name, the school details, the category the learner is, and your details as the judge must be in there. And then it starts off, ethical issues identified. So it's a simple checklist where you only cross what is applicable. So the first one says, the research involves breaking of any of the country's laws. If that is not the case, you don't make a cross. But the problem here is, wherever you made a cross, if there is a cross made, then it means that project has an ethical violation and therefore should be considered for disqualification. But sometimes the ethical issue can be rectified. And that brings us to the difference between no violation, moderate violation, and severe violation. So if this violation cannot be fixed, if it cannot be fixed, then it is severe. But if a simple intervention can fix it, then it is considered a moderate violation. Example, the learner, let me quickly think of an example. The learner did testing on the dog. They put the dog on the treadmill and then took the dog's heart rate to see how running on the treadmill for 3 hours affects the heart rate. That is a big no-no. It's an ethical violation, disqualified. But what the learner failed to tell you in the report, and they only tell you in the interview now, is, no, I took the dog to the vet, and the vet has a treadmill there. So the vet asked me to put the dog on there, the dog was running, and then the vet took the heart rate, and I captured the data. Then that can easily be fixed because now it's not an ethical violation. The child didn't do the testing. A registered professional did the testing. All the child needs to do is say, okay, get the evidence from the vet. The vet needs to issue a letter to say, I, Dr. Nicho, did the testing on the Jack Russell of Keketso Liteva, and the learner only recorded the results. If that letter is there as proof, then technically speaking, there is no ethical violation. So initially, yes, without that letter, there was a moderate violation. And you can make a note that the child's parent actually came with a letter. Because the child said, hey, WhatsApp, Mom, I need a letter from the vet. Then the vet gives the letter. You can make a note and say the child brought the letter eventually, but it was a moderate violation. You wouldn't disqualify that. But if it is evident that the child did that testing alone, then it would be a severe violation. So this last part, this is at the bottom of that judge's ethics report, needs to be completed. Here is a space for the judge to write a comment. So you can clarify that and say, I gave a moderate violation because the professional's letter was not available. Then the letter was presented to me afterwards. Therefore, there is no violation any longer. And similarly, on the assessment sheet, there is also a space that you saw earlier where you can talk about plagiarism and ethics. So on the assessment sheet as well, you will duplicate that comment to say the professional's document was not there, it was brought later, therefore it moved from moderate or from severe, it moved to moderate. So there's an indication of moderate and severe. And then we have an explanation here. So it says ethical issues have been identified, but leniency may apply. There is no gray area here. 2 to 4 written violations noted. These may be copied text, images, or ideas which are not referenced. Issues can be corrected. So that's the important part about a moderate violation. The issue can be fixed. In a severe violation, there's no hope of fixing that thing on the day right there. Brand names are used extensively. Even stuff like brand names. I sometimes think it could be moderate because if the child has brand names in the document on the board, it's easy to just black it out, take a black cookie and close all those things. And then it means the violation is gone. All right, but sometimes it is so extensive that blacking out this brand name would actually just kill the entire project. No attempt for corrective or preventative measures has been made. More than 4 written violations. Plagiarism checker shows more than 30%. That is regarded as severe plagiarism. In conclusion, the judges must complete the ethics report. They must include their full details. So for auditing purposes, they can be contacted. At the bottom of the judge's assessment sheet, they fill in the comments. Regardless of the observed ethical violation, the learner's project is still assessed. Even though they copied and pasted it from the internet and got 95 according to the assessment sheet, it's fine. Submit it to your marks capturer into the ethics team and say this child got 95, but it's a copy and paste. Here's the URL, and then the necessary job will be done, reducing that mark, communicating with the learner so that they do not repeat that problem in future again. That concludes the session on judging. I will now open the floor for any questions. Are there any questions, colleagues? From my side, just again, please do not forget to fill in the attendance register. Posted it again. Thank you again, Charles, for copy and pasting the whole time. I really appreciate it. Right. Oh, there's a question. Thank you, Kabelo. Go ahead.
But then you go.
Yes.
I didn't get it on the judgment structure. Are you saying that we must in each category we must have a chief judge and two other judges?
Okay.
I didn't get it there.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate that. I'm going to quickly go back and then go and talk about it again for you. Let's just okay.
Yeah.
Just give me a second. Just give me a second. I'll do that quickly for you. Let's go back all the way there. There we go. There we go. Okay. So the chief judge is, like I said, the person that is in charge of everything. This person is the final say. But he's not working in a category. He's working with everyone. So he's responsible for every category in the hall at that time. All right. So he's just operating there on his own. Then, in terms of categories now we're moving. When we are here, we are in categories now. You have a convener for those categories, for the 13 categories. So there will be 13 conveners. Now, what sometimes happens is some of the categories are small, so you can group them together. So, for instance, I would put agricultural science, plant science. I can put those together. Therefore, I don't need 13 categories, 13 conveners now. I can put those under one person. So this person, this convener, is not necessarily judging projects, but they are managing the judging within the category. The category judges, these guys, they are the ones talking to the learners. They are looking at the project reports and doing the assessment. All right. So when they are done with their assessments, they meet with this convener and they discuss the marks per project and decide on final marks. So you don't need a chief judge for each of the categories. Actually, if you want to look at it, then this convener is the chief judge for his category. He is in charge of his category. And he is in control of the process happening amongst these category judges. Does that make sense?
All right. Okay. Yes, thanks. Thank you, Dad.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, it makes sense now.
All right.
Yes.
Charles, I see your hand. You can unmute, Charles. I suppose two teachers that are in this meeting have just come together, and that's why it's giving us feedback. And I'm sorry, Charles, I see you trying to speak, but you are breaking up. Charles,
I just want.
Try again, because right at the end you were coming through very clearly, Charles. Please ask again. or else you can type it in the chats. Still breaking up here on my side. Still breaking up. I think maybe send me an email, Charles, or a WhatsApp, and then I can respond to your question. Unfortunately, the rest of the audience won't have benefit of hearing, and that's now very unfortunate. But all right, colleagues, thank you so much. I hope these 4 sessions have assisted you in planning how you are going to execute your expos and so forth. Kabelo, yes?
I don't have anything to say, sir.
Okay, okay.
Thank you very much.
It's a big pleasure, big pleasure. Please
Yes.
look forward to your certificates. I'm going to get them in order, and then what I usually do is I copy Mr. Liteba in there. So if for some reason I've missed your email or anything like that, he has a copy, and then he can send it to you as well.
All right. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Good luck with the rest of the year. And don't be strangers. If you have questions, please check the email or WhatsApp. Pasani is really trying to speak, but Pasani, if you are in the room with a person who is in the meeting already, then it creates feedback like that. I see something in the chats. Charles is not audible, can type his question. Yeah, I was hoping he'll type it here. But please drop me a WhatsApp, Charles. I will answer your questions. Yeah, so from my side, thank you. It's always a pleasure. I always look forward to these Friday morning sessions. I don't know if Mr. Liteba has any closing remarks, and then we can conclude for the day. Kabelo? Oh, no, nothing.
No, I didn't raise up my hand.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I raised up my hand.
Okay, okay. Keketso, anything from your side, sir? I don't think so. I don't think so. Okay, no. Then it's fine. Have a good day, guys. Enjoy the weekend that's coming up.
Thank you, sir.
Bye, sir. Bye.